And today we have Brady with us. He has his bachelor's degree in finance, his MBA from Weber State University. And something interesting I just learned about him is that he plays the banjo as well as the piano and the guitar. So that's pretty cool. I don't think I've
Highly
met
impressive.
anybody who plays the banjo before. Um, I know Brady through my friend when I was living in Utah, and we wanted to ask him to be on the podcast with us because he has a unique spiritual gift that we will let him talk about. He is very, very empathic, or people say he's an empath.
Can we start with Brady? What would you define is this gift? What does it mean to you?
What does it mean? It means, to me, it means the ability to um, sense other people, to be able to feel other people, to know things about them, um, to speak with them on a spiritual level,
Mhm.
and to be able to use that to help them.
That's really cool. So, when did you realize you had this gift?
I was a teenager when I first, I think I had experiences with it earlier, but I think I was able to begin defining it probably as I was a teenager.
What did that look like
Yeah,
in your life at that time?
Well, as friends, you're learning a lot of social skills, and you're learning a lot about each other and how you relate to people, and you're solidifying um, your interactions. You're solidifying your um, just the way that you can communicate with others, the way you handle. You got a friend who's traumatic, or you got a friend who has this problem, a friend who has this problem, or a friend who's quiet, or and learning how to deal with those. I could sense more about them, and that became a very impactful part of my life. Through that process, I made a promise to Heavenly Father for myself that if He would allow me to help other people that way, that I promised Him that I would never use that to manipulate anybody, that I would never use that to for my own selfish purposes. That I would always try and use that to help somebody else see more who they are, and to help people realize their potential.
That's beautiful.
yeah,
I have made a similar promise with my own spiritual gifts, with spirit communication and being sensitive through the veil with people, that, if Heavenly Father would help me learn how to use that gift, that I would never use it, to my own advantage or to any ill purpose. So I love that you had the sensibility early on to see that and to see the potential, both for good and for ill, out of that. Because I'm
yeah,
sure as a teenager, it's probably pretty overwhelming.
right. And not every teenager has the emotional bandwidth to make those connections, you know? When you were saying that as you made a promise to Heavenly Father, I was like, oh, I wonder if he made the same promise I made as a teenager. Sometimes I joke that it was a curse because I promised that I would go through anything hard if I could use that experience to help other people later. Like I take it back. Just kidding.
Look back at your life and think,
Oh,
No, but
oh,
it's similar. It's similar thing where you just say, I want to consecrate this to helping other people.
yes,
So that's really cool.
absolutely. And in turn, you know, and you take on yourself um, further light and knowledge.
right?
Mm,
Which is in and of itself sometimes a struggle, right? Because you have maybe more of a window where some people have a door, and so you're seeing things that a lot of people miss sometimes,
mm.
which gives you aspect into, I mean, it's in my personal experience, because maybe I have maybe a bigger understanding about some things than other people do.
Mhm.
People's choices or behaviors can be frustrating. They can be
Yes.
hurtful, um, in a different way. Did you find that, especially when you were young and coming into yourself? Did you find that you had experiences where people didn't understand, or it became painful?
Very much so on handling the capacity of it, because it's not always something that you can always turn on and off for me.
Right.
It's something that's happening all the time, and sometimes in awkward situations, and you you can't always turn it on and off, and you don't always know why, but you try and take that on and use it. Hey, I'm learning. I am um, this is coming to help me to learn and to increase my capacity. And yeah, yeah, you don't always know why in every moment. I don't always know why in every moment. And um, I don't try and flip that around like, I wouldn't run up to somebody, oh, guess what? I know this about you. Like that just, of course, that's weird. Like who would do that? But understanding about somebody, it, it gives you an immense compassion for them and
Mm.
who they are, and a compassion for all people in their capacity.
That kind of leads to my next question, which was, what spiritual gift would you identify this as?
The gift of discernment, absolutely.
Hmm.
It took me a long time to understand this. And a lot of researching and studying on my own, um, prayer and just to be able to understand what that really was or what that really is defined as. And that's what that is.
The gift of discernment is one of my favorite gifts because it is the breadth of what it can be is huge, right?
It is
It has this
absolutely.
label, and then there are all these nuances that fall in there,
Yes.
like empathy or intuition or even mind discerning spirits. Like even those
Yes.
things, it kind
Yes.
of all falls into this one basket of this beautiful family of gifts.
Absolutely. And when you start to learn one aspect of it, it does flow into the others.
Right? They're all interconnected, which is
They
also
are.
beautiful because within that family group itself, it lends understanding and capacity and growth, right? Because you can
Yes.
grow in many directions. I think it's one of the most liberally given gifts, just in general. I mean, many people have the gift of discernment in some fashion and to some
Mhm.
degree. I don't think we understand that as deeply as maybe we should.
If other people did understand what their capacity was to do that, if other people built that up, you would have a lot more people reaching out or spending their time helping other people, not
Right.
looking to tear each other down.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I agree.
What's it like being a male empath? Because a lot of men don't are not as in touch with their feelings, maybe as women.
It's a way to phrase it, not so in touch with their
I
feelings.
don't know. I'm
Maybe
not trying
don't
to.
pick up
Yes.
as much. They don't have as much social intelligence, as much emotional intelligence.
Okay. So I'm going to say this straightforward. I think men are as emotionally intelligent as women. I think that men
Thank you
have a
for saying
different,
that.
I think men have a different story. Men love to, I think, and this is general, this is always general because, speaking generally, because not everybody's exactly like this. Um, but I think men like to know the end of the story before they want to know the middle of the story. And women like to tell the middle of the story before the end of the story. And so that's where I think that there's a communication problem between men and women. They don't understand each other all the time. And with men, as I communicate with other men, as I am using my empathic abilities with men, it is easier to go to the end of the story with them and backfill.
Hmm.
It's so much
Hmm.
easier. With women, it's the opposite.
As a male who tends to have this kind of more innate understanding of things, did you ever find that hard to grapple with, to communicate to people?
Yes, it changes my interaction because as I interact with men, um, you want
How do they respond well, I guess is my
men,
question.
men respond well when you talk about the end of the story. You don't have to tell a whole story to them, and you just tell them the result, and they will be like, "Oh, okay." They'll put the pieces together, or ask more questions to put the pieces together. With women, you have to tell them the story, and then they'll create the conclusion.
So, did
Mhm.
you tell your friends at some point, like, "Oh, I have this ability or I have this gift"?
Very few people have I shared that with in my life. Or I would lighten it up for them. so to say, just not go into the depth of or capacity of what that meant, um, because most people most people don't understand or don't want to understand. The world has created a bad stigma because there are people all over with gifts and abilities that misuse them,
Right.
or make a bad name for them, and that allows for the reality of what God has given us, to unfold righteously. And if we to be able to express it or talk about it, I mean, how many TV shows can you go through that touch on some of these items, but abuse it? And when it
Right.
comes down to it, they're very sacred. They're very sacred to me. The experiences and um, the abilities are sacred to me. I don't want to defile them or to disrespect that ability in any way, or I don't deserve it.
What a very grounded perspective.
If you're comfortable sharing an experience with us about when you were able to use this gift, so we can kind of see the play by play, like how you use it and what that looks like.
I think I've used it in a lot of different capacities in my life. Um, and like I said, sometimes it just happens. You can't always just turn it on and off. But
Mm.
there are times when I've used it. For example, I would use this one often. I was serving in a bishopric, um, served there for quite a few years, and I learned quickly. I'd see the bishop come out of his office, and he'd come out with somebody. I didn't know what was going on in there or what they had talked about, but I could see that the bishop was carrying a heavy load, very heavy. And knowing that only he has the ability to carry that, I would try and do other things to carry his other loads, like do other tasks for him, or even just go sit down with his office and make a few jokes with him, to lighten that load because that's something that I could do.
I always find it very interesting in the way that people um like these gifts are like practically manifested to a person, like how they feel it, how they experience it. When I was a child, I was sensitive, I was empathic, and I had no idea it was going to open up into more than that. But I was very keyed into the emotions of everybody around me, especially my family.
Hmm.
I was very close with a cousin. She would have a bad day, and I didn't even have to talk to her. I would just know, and I would text her, be like, "What happened?" the moment she got
Yep.
into a fight, right? Or with my parents, if they were fighting, even through closed doors, I would know. And that, I think, one of the dangers of being an empath that most people face is taking on those burdens of other people unintentionally.
Yes.
Um, I was actually just having a conversation with someone just the other day in our congregation, and she is also an empath, and it has been more of a curse to her than a blessing because all of these things, especially within her own family, which has been had kind of a disrupted past, um, it's been things that she's taken on and not been able to get rid of. She hasn't been able to let go, and many empaths can't tell the difference of something that is theirs and isn't theirs. Have you ever had experience with that?
I think I may have, earlier on as I was younger, learning that, I guess, as you deal with, your friends and you talk friends through problems and things like that, learning that those are theirs. You can't, and I mean, the reality is you don't want to take those things away from them. That belongs to them. That's their experience. Maybe helping them see who they are in that and giving them some strength or helping them see their capacity can be a much better way of approaching it or much better way of helping them through, lifting them.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
That's something a
oh,
therapist would say, I feel like, because they
Gosh.
take on a lot and
mhm,
they have to give people the tools instead of being like just that heavy burden. They empower their clients by helping them with the tools. So
yeah.
Live your life calling Brady.
I think we figured it out for you.
Jeez.
Um, but it's no, it's something that's affected me too because I am also very empathic in nature. And I remember going to church camp as a teenager that used to be called Especially for Youth. And there's like groups of 12 with the counselor. And my counselor pulled me aside one day and she said, "You remind me of my little brother." She says, "You take on too much. You take on other people's burdens. You're carrying your own burdens. You're carrying other people's burdens." She said, "You need to give that cross to Jesus and let him carry it with you because you're I can see that you're weighed down." And my brother is the same way. And it was so impactful that she could see that about me and she could label it and name it for me and she could give me a tool because
Right.
yeah. And I was kind of jealous. Like she just seems so lighthearted, because there is a heaviness to this gift of being able to take on.
Yes.
If there's a gift, it's good too, because you can really help people and see people and identify things. I was at pickleball like a year ago and I had a friend come in and I could just feel something was off with her. And so I was asking her, I'm like, "How are you really doing?" And she was like, and she vented to me about the situation and we talked about it. And I was able to understand and kind of put to words what she was trying to express. And so after I did, she's like, "Oh my gosh, I have no idea how much I needed to have this conversation with you. And thanks for helping me understand like what's going on." And anyway, it was a really cool conversation. And that particular experience wasn't so heavy, but you do kind of carry pieces of it with you. You have to just
Yes.
Let it
make
out.
use of the atonement, right? And let it out so that you're not using the gift in a way that's damaging to yourself.
You do, and absolutely. I think that carrying others' burdens, I think that that may be a step that has to be taken in order to learn. There is another danger, though, that comes up with empaths that I think is even more dangerous that I think that people should be aware of, and that's the fact that being an empath means you have this ongoing need or want or desire to be helping people. And so you're
Mm,
reaching out. Well, not everybody out there has good intentions. And it makes you susceptible to people who will take advantage of who you are. They will tear you down. They will abuse you
mm-hmm.
because you're in a situation where you're open and you think you think that people are kind and good and because you see kindness and goodness everywhere. But there are people who are not, and I think that it has taken me a lot of years to learn that one, and through a bad marriage, to realize that there are people who would take advantage of that and abuse and manipulate you,
And
um,
exploit it.
absolutely for
Yeah.
their own good. That is 100% who Satan is. And will that is exactly what his purpose was from the beginning, was to take and exploit who you are for his own benefit.
Right. And it's interesting to note. I mean, I've known many people, and empaths tend to be nurturing, right? They're nurturers. They're healers. They're healers of the world because they're driven, because they can experience other people's pain and emotion. So
Hmm.
they're driven to heal. They're driven to nurture and to care and to give light. But I have known people in the past who have, like you said, have been taken advantage of, and
Yes.
that corruption steals that light away and tarnishes it and makes it
Yes.
jaded. So having, you hinted on your own experience, in a bad marriage. How do you overcome that? How have you in your life gotten away from that tarnish and that corruption?
I think you have to set your boundaries for yourself on who you're around. Just the same way you limit your experience and exposure to things that are not from God, you limit and you cut off your exposure to people who are not going to be good and helpful. You have to cut those things off.
Yeah. As you're talking about boundaries, another boundary came into my mind. I think oftentimes people that are empathic want to do so much good, but they have to be careful not to get themselves into like savior syndrome, where
Yeah.
they,
Savior complex.
yeah, exactly. Like, because Brady, you said you're not just going to go up to everybody that you see that you can kind of sense what they're feeling, be like, "Open up to me. I'm your free therapist." We have to be careful, like, and ask God and be in tune with the spirit. How do you want me to use this gift today? Because I could run myself ragged trying
That
to,
is a good question.
right? So, what's the best way to use this gift without compromising my own integrity? Like, whereas I don't want to deplete myself so that I can't take care of my family or I can't work, I can't function in society
I think that balance is extremely important.
because.
So glad you brought up balance.
Yeah, that you have to have balance there. We need to learn. If it's not something that we know how to do currently to not take on other people's feelings, we need to learn how to balance that out because there's already somebody who's done that. We don't have to
Mm,
do that for people. Um, However, if you have a certain gift, then you're part of that process. You're not the solution. You're not the solution. You cannot own it for them. They have an experience that they're going through. You can't take that away from them. Showing somebody who they really are means they have confidence in themselves. And if I really think that's what empaths full purpose is not to give somebody a false hope, but to show them who they really are,
I
to
love that.
give them the ability to see it for themselves, so that their strength comes from in themselves, not from somebody else.
Yeah, almost like you're a mirror. You can see the thing that is at their core, their divine
Absolutely.
potential, maybe. And then you can reflect that back. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
beautiful.
I think that if those who are trying to carry it, that goes back to the ability. I think you have to start asking yourself why. Like, why do you feel like you have to carry it? Are you trying to satisfy a need? Are you trying to satisfy something in yourself to be useful? You're useful who you are. And I think empaths need to figure out who they are inside so that they are not carrying things for other people, so that they really know who they are as part of that process, that they're lifting.
I
Yeah,
love that.
Um, pushing, but not doing all the carrying. That's the
Right.
savior's job. Only he can do that.
I love
yeah.
that. We're part of the process, but we're not the whole process. And that lifting reminds me of that Elder Uchtdorf quote. He's a leader in our church. Lift where you stand.
When we begin to develop these baby gifts, like we have a realization, oh, this is what this is.
Hmm.
We go on this journey of understanding, hopefully ourselves, and how to apply this, how to use this in such a beautiful way. But to see it come to a full maturity where you're like, ah, this is what this means. This is what it's for, is to help someone become the best that they are,
Yes.
that divine potential of what they are. It's not about you, it's not about anyone else. It's about helping other people become. And that is altruism. That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I think there are people that don't necessarily have these experiences for themselves, but are interested in the process of what that feels like. How do you experience this? Some people, some empaths like feel it on their skin. Some people feel it like it's their own emotion. Some people just know these things. How is it that you feel these things?
Okay, to go really, really deep into this,
Let's do it.
for me, it is an experience of my spirit communicating with other spirits. Our spirits are talking, and I can never read somebody with their spirit unwilling. It's like an ask. It's not like, hey, it's just something you do. There's no light switch turning it on and off. It's more like my spirit asks their spirit for permission first, never disrespecting them or their will. And if their spirit says okay, then yes, then it's an immediate flood of openness and information. That window that you talked about, that window opens
Right.
and things become apparent. Certain things become apparent, and that allows me to ask questions about them, like, what about this? What about that? But there are people who are closed where their spirits are not willing to open,
Right.
and that's okay. I respect that very much.
So is this a conscious action that you can take?
No, I mean, not so when you say conscious, I think you're thinking about like a mental process, like you think through it. There's no mental thought or process to it. There's no physical process to it for me.
It's
To me,
unconscious.
Hmm.
it's spiritual.
Just to dig when you say like you can then ask questions or get information. Is this something that is un I don't want to say uncontrolled for you, just not something that you're consciously thinking through. It's something it's like instinctive almost, where that question just is a natural follow on to what occurs, and then the information comes to you.
If you think about it, like any process that we do that we're experiencing in this life, like a breathing process, you do it without thinking about it. Your body
Right.
does it. Um, there are processes we have to think about to initiate or engage it. And those are mental processes. There are emotional processes that we have to begin and stop through emotion. I don't necessarily feel this is that way. I feel this is more a communication between spirits,
Hmm.
between the language that we all spoke before, the language that we all speak, um, of who we were before. We
Right.
had to learn the physical languages and the emotional languages. We've had to learn that after we came here. The spiritual language, we've always known it. That's been around
Hmm.
for a long, long time, and so we know that language well. And coming here doesn't mean that that language stops. That language continues. Yes, I think that there have been times where I have mentally thought that, but I feel like it's a spiritual process before anything else.
Yeah, it reminds me of the episode we did with Hallie where she talks about energy work, how she has to ask permission.
I was thinking the same thing.
And then
Yeah.
it also makes me think about, I bring these up often, but near death experiences, I've read several of them, Elle has as well. And that's how people communicate after when they go to the other side. They're like, it was so weird. We were talking with our mouths, we were just talking through our minds or through our spirits. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't sound weird to
Unconscious.
me. I'm like, of course that's how it'd be. It's a pure form of communication. Um,
it's it's not
yeah.
different. It's what we've always done.
Right.
Right.
So I love hearing that because bringing things back to the root, I love that. I was just listening to a church instructor. He teaches a class on Tuesdays, and he talks about Harry Potter series. He's like, life on Earth is like the middle books of the Harry Potter series. Without the first two books and without the last two books, like we're just living like if you just read books 3, 4, and 5, you wouldn't really understand the story completely. It wouldn't completely make sense. But then because we're missing parts 1 and 2, that's the life we had before we came here, pre-existence. And then the ending is, after this life is over or when Jesus comes back, like there's part 6 and 7. And so we're really just kind of in the middle, doing our best of a messy world, right? So it's just kind of fun to like think about it in that broader perspective. Also, I have to be completely honest, I never read Harry Potter, but I think it's a good analogy. I'm sorry.
Camille,
I'm sorry.
bad
I was
millennial
okay.
you are.
It came out when I was a senior in high school, and I was like that kid that was reading, like listening to books on like business and all like nonfiction
Oh
stuff.
my
Everyone else was like
gosh.
wrapped in Harry Potter, and I was like, you guys are silly. And I was like listening to
You
books
missed a
for like,
phenomenon.
I'm just a weirdo.
We'll let that slide
That's so
because we
funny.
love you.
People are gonna be like, we don't like Camille anymore.
One of the things that I'm passionate about that I do is to help people understand their spiritual gifts and to grow them and to make them maybe more intentional instead of, because a lot of people function within this without understanding or awareness. And so it can happen subconsciously and even be somewhat damaging. Like I was saying with the person before who is an empath, who's always seen it as kind of a curse because it's gaining too much, it's taking on too much, it's not being able to discharge that or use it to its highest capacity. And so this is a field that I've worked with for several years and I've studied, my own personal studies within and without the gospel because, these gifts exist within and without the gospel and people experience
Yeah,
them. So putting
100%.
language to it, um, we in worldly terms, I mean in a gospel setting, we would call this the language of the spirit. Absolutely. But a rose by any other name is yet still a
Absolutely.
rose. And so linguistically, these things have been giving names. Most people would recognize them within this field as the clairs. So clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience, clair cognizance. And so the the language of the spirit, and this is exactly, I love your telling because it's exactly how spirit communication works, whether it is on an earthly plane or through the veil.
Yes.
It's the same because it's the language of the spirit, right? And it's even
Yes.
how God and the Holy Ghost communicate with us as well, because the Holy Ghost is a spirit communicator. And
Absolutely.
so when I experience things through the veil, when I speak with spirits, I'll see things, I'll hear things, I will feel things, or I will know things. Those are the predominant senses. Did I miss one? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Um, and so different people relate information in different ways. And it's always really
Yeah.
interesting for me to see, because I kind of relate it as like people can be visual learners or kinesthetic learners, or different ways, and spirits have the same kind of concept. Some spirits are very visual, and some spirits are very
Mhm.
emotional, and some spirits are will speak to you with words. And
Yeah.
so I love that, and I love that you experience it exactly the same way, because it's a universal language that we came
It
knowing
is.
and will know after.
I mean, just like in a physical language, people talk with their hands. People will
Mhm.
be more flowery in their descriptions. People will be short, give one word answers, and
Concise. Yeah.
yes, and I think it's exactly the same way.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
know in my book, when I'm trying to explain like how I stay connected to my son after he passed away, I say it's like learning a different language, but we can learn
Exactly.
it. It's not impossible. Some, yeah, learning languages does come easier to some people. I mean, Elle speaks Chinese. I've been speaking semi-fluent Spanish since high school, and just from high school classes, because I'm really enthusiastic about learning languages. But like anybody who has a desire to learn this language can. You can develop the skills. It's not just like you have
Yes.
the gift or you don't. Sorry, we're told
No.
to seek after the best gifts, so we can all develop them, and we're encouraged to, and we should, because we don't want to live beneath the privileges that we've been given, right? Like if there's
Yes.
like really yummy fruit on the tree of life, like I don't want to settle for like eating herbs or like other things along the
Ground fruit,
way.
ground
I don't
Or
flowers.
know.
just chew on the
I just
grass.
would rather go eat the tree on the fruit of the tree that's the best one. I'm gonna go for that.
So good. That is so true. And you talked about your son. I mean, that reminded me. I had a sister that passed away
Yeah, that's right.
before I was born.
Right.
She was the oldest of my siblings, um, including her. There's 7 siblings in my family, so it's a good sized family. And every single one of us have a relationship with her.
Mm,
That's
Um,
beautiful.
yeah.
and it is from the same things. It is something that we develop, and families are very important.
Yeah. As human beings, we like to categorize things. We want things to fit neatly within our understanding, and we want to put them in boxes because we like to, categorize and socialize things out. Um, Socialize, categorize, and separate things out. Um, and within this broadness of this gift of discernment we were just talking about, or within any spiritual gift, even maybe the gift of prophecy, which you were hinting at just a minute ago, um, all of these things operate in the same way, which is like
Yes,
spirit. It is through the spirit, it is of the spirit, which we all possess as, spirit children of one God.
absolutely.
And so it's interesting that we like to take these things apart and divide them and say, well, this is this and this is this, and they're separate and they're not the same. But really though,
Yeah, they all kind of come together.
We have to be also a little bit careful about categorizing things, because the second we define what it is, then we're not open to it being something else.
right? We limit it.
And we limit it. We put the boundaries on it, and don't let it expand beyond
Right.
what we think it is. And so we do, like you said, like we do like to do that. I think we need to be a little bit careful as we categorize that, because if we do put those limits on it, then that's what it will be. That's its full
Right.
capacity. Elder Scott once gave a talk in conference, and forgive me for paraphrasing because it's just a little bit ago,
That's
but
okay. It's just that it's Elle's favorite, so you better not paraphrase too
Yeah. I love
okay.
Elder Scott. He's my buddy.
um,
bad.
Elder Scott. He's my mission president's mission president. I feel a bond with
That's
him. So
amazing.
he's a former. He's since passed away, but a leader of the church, for sure. And he once gave a talk about this process of receiving revelation, and talked about that when we ask for a revelation, you stop and you wait for it, and you wait for it to come, and then you don't stop and say, "Okay, I'm done." but then you say, what else? And
Hmm.
you ask for more.
And you write
Um,
it down. You write it down. I know
yes,
exactly what talk you're
writing
referencing.
I remember
Yes,
this talk.
and writing it down tells the spirit that you're willing to learn more. And oh, I love that. I love that. And the second we say, okay, this is enough, I don't think the Heavenly Father gets angry with us. I think he says, okay.
Well,
He
wait.
says, okay, you're okay. This is enough for you. And I'm happy that you received what you did receive. Um, but let's understand that we are limiting ourselves by doing that.
And I think that is in context not just with God, but with ourselves as well. Every time I put myself in that box and I'm like, I've done the thing. This is what I am.
Right?
I am proven wrong and sometimes in painful ways. So,
Yes. Yes, no,
Right.
yeah.
that is exactly right. I found like being an empath, sorry if I'm going off here on a wrong experience, but like one experience, this happened just a few weeks ago. I was picking up my daughter from school and I could just tell, something's wrong. And so I asked her, I said, what's going on? And she's like, well, I think this and this. And well, I felt in this case it was appropriate and I felt okay to speak more boldly to her. She said, I'm having problems with friends and this um and I spoke out more frankly with her and I said, you're experiencing depression right now. I said, I can feel it and we need to talk about that. Yeah, when I saw her the next time, she's like, Dad, I've been thinking a lot about that and that's kind of helped me. And things weren't all 100% better for, but they were better.
Hmm.
And I think her understanding a little bit more who she is and what she's facing um, helps. I think that's what the true role of empath is to help people
Identify.
help people stretch their,
Yeah.
not to carry it for them. And as a dad, that's hard because I want to carry it for my daughter.
Yeah.
I want to.
In a contradiction to our conversation we just had about not limiting things or labeling things, let me say, sometimes it's liberating too, right? Because as a
Yes.
child, your daughter probably didn't understand the context of what that is. And we hear the word depression, we hear the word anxiety. These are hot words these days that, are thrown around for all kinds of things. But to be able to understand the real context of what your daughter was experiencing and help her put that name to it and say, this is what that
Yes.
is
Yeah, and to
hugely
accept
informative.
it. I think that's an important part of
Totally.
what an empath is to help people define it who are not always able to define it
Yeah,
themselves.
to
Yeah.
understand.
I like what you said about shame, and that's why I'm passionate about this podcast, is because I think there's a lot of people that experience spiritual gifts in isolation. They don't want to be open about it because they feel weird, or maybe they found a few friends that they can um, open up to that have similar experiences, so they find their own like little small community, or they have one trusted friend. But to be able
Hmm.
to just be open about it, and if people want to share an experience and they feel prompted to share it on here, share it, because uh, there can be a shame, and I think that's the adversary coming
Stigma.
in.
It's a stigma,
Yeah, it's a stigma, but I think that's the adversary coming in and taking something that's sacred and beautiful and making it kind of dark. Like, I don't want to share this. Is this
manipulating it.
right? Exactly. Because, in the culture of our church, there tends to be, if it's so sacred, we just need to not talk about it. Um, but is silence actually reverence, or right? Is there a different
Yes.
way?
I think giving people an example of the appropriate way to use these gifts, because not everyone has the example for what that should look like or what that needs to look like, because the world is going to tell you to do it in a very different way. And
Hmm.
not everyone has the ability intrinsically to like necessarily navigate that in the smoothest course. Most of it is not smooth. I would say that you and I, Brady, fall into this category of people who like stumbled into the right way of doing it, the right way of like making it be like retaining the purity of what it should be, which then leads to growth, which leads to, the fulfillment of something beautiful. But the world is going to teach you a very different way. And I experienced that when I was younger, knowing that I had spiritual gifts that made me different. I wandered all kinds of diverse paths at the beginning, trying to find an explanation for something that nobody else was talking about. And if people had just talked about it, like I would have been like, there's my example. This is what I do,
This
right?
is fine.
This is
Yeah.
how it should operate instead of making it something that there's a
That's
stigma,
so
making
good.
it hush hush, taboo.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we have the scriptural definition of things, right?
Yeah,
We have, I mean, we have books and we have people who try and give us definitions, but you're right, absolutely. I think people should honestly and respectfully seek these things out and learn about what it means to them and how to use that. I think the more that they do, they're going to be put in situations where they're going to be able to help people.
exactly.
Um, that's, I think, what God intends for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
I sometimes we think about, oh, all of that stuff will just like appear one day. It'll appear like after, after I pass on, and like, no, I don't think that's the intent. I think the intent is for us to develop no matter where we are.
Hmm.
I I think I'd like to get started. This life is hard, and it's just going to be hard. We need we need each other, and if we can help people to feel better about who they are, to understand their true capacity, to understand their divine purpose, they can make it one more day. They can make it further. They need that.
It's so easy to judge someone else and like, well, they're not a perfect person, so they cannot have this gift. Like, I don't want to listen or follow or like be part of that because they've got problems. It's like if we all waited to be perfect before we helped each other,
Hmm.
sad state of society. God calls people, no matter their state, to take them where they are with the capacity they have
So
to help.
cool.
I think it was Elder Holland, another leader in our church, who said that, we're all broken vessels. None of us are going to be perfect. We're all going to be broken. And the Lord only has broken vessels to use to fulfill
Yeah.
his
How
mission.
frustrating, right?
I don't think that you can develop true empathy without understanding that,
Hmm.
Yeah.
without understanding that we're all imperfect people. And I'm sorry, maybe a member of the 12 drinks Diet Coke, and I don't think that changes anything. It's not
Yeah.
going to change the
Yeah.
words that are coming out of their mouth or their work or their mission. So each of us has a mission. Each of us has a place to be on this earth.
Well, thank you so much for being on here. We really like this conversation. I've learned a lot. It was really insightful. So thanks for jumping on here today with us.
Well, thank you.
We have a website now. It's throughtheveilpodcast.com. You can contact us on there if you have any questions. We also have a community on Facebook called Through the Veil Podcast Community.
And we have monthly meetups. So this month, they're usually the last Thursday of every month. And we discuss these kinds of topics. We discuss development and what your own personal gifts are. And we just kind of create a community where people can ask questions and share experiences and find other people who are also on this path of spiritual growth. This month will be on the
Leap
29th,
the leap year day.
Leap Day.
Leap day.
Ooh.
How fitting.